Hello and welcome to the live coverage of the 2025 World Aquatics Open Water World Cup. My name is Will Rollo, joined today by Olympian and co-commentator Alice Steering as we bring you all the action from Setubal, Portugal, an iconic stop on the World Aquatics World Cup Series, a venue steeped in open water tradition. Setubal has hosted more World Cup events than any other locations, and once again, the Sardo River provides the setting for today's 10-kilometer men's race. Conditions are calm, but deceptively demanding, with the water hovering just below 20 degrees Celsius. A light northerly breeze may play a factor in the later stages of today's race. Under the leadership of World Aquatics, this series continues to bring together the world's best across oceans, rivers, and lakes, testing not just speed, but resilience, strategy, and world-class preparation. Alice, it's great to have you with me again. Before we meet the field, how do you see this race shaping up in these conditions?
Hey, well, always so fantastic to be here with you. Such an exciting race, and as you were saying, an iconic stop on the World Cup circuit, as it always has been, and always a challenging one. Always one where you really have to be mentally, physically prepared. It's very testing for the athletes, but I think it's really that place that you get to test things out very well. And what a great last stop before we head into the World Championships in Singapore.
Such a crucial point, which we will, of course, dive into throughout today's World Cup coverage. There are some big names that are going to be hoping to take away some key learnings from today's event, including the very freshly crowned European champion, Krzysztof Rosowski. He'll be the last man introduced to the field today. Of course, the 2024 Olympic champion as well. Is Krzysztof back just charging into the World Championships with the right form?
Yeah, I mean, coming off the back of an Olympic Games, he still went to the World Cups at the back end of 2024 and wasn't as we typically see him in terms of, like punching through at the end and really causing some chaos in the last the few meters in the race. So it's fantastic to see that he took home that crown at the European Championships in the 10K and the 3K knockout. So there's definitely the fight and energy within him that we are used to seeing. We just see Florian Wellbrock walking down to the start line now as well. I believe that is Florian, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, with Rosowski, it's very exciting to see that he is back on that typical form that we like to see him at. There's also the 2020 silver medalist at the Olympic Games. So the pedigree and caliber that he brings to races is just so powerful.
Yeah, certainly is a star-studded field, and to your point, that is Florian Wellbrock. When he's not in those top 10 athletes being introduced, it's a scary prospect for the athletes on the start line. Also in the mix today, Marcelo Guidi, the defending champion from 12 months ago, racing here. He was able to break away on that final lap, leading to about a 20-second victory in the end. It caught us somewhat by surprise.
Yes.
But do you think that swims ahead of Guidi today?
I mean, I don't see why not. I think this is why I love Setubal because there's always something where you're like, oh wow, what happened there? I think thinking back to Leah Boy at the same competition last year, that was also her breakthrough swim. So we had two quite big surprises in terms of the podium finishing, and yeah, I just love what this race can do for athletes because it can take the top ones down quite a few placings, and those who you weren't quite expecting can really punch through.
So here is Tiago Campos of Portugal, the Olympian from 2024. In a home crowd, it does mean a lot. We saw just how much it meant to Angela Martinez in Spain. Tiago potentially has a big calling ahead of him if he's hoping to give these home fans the similar experience.
Yes, definitely. Always great to see local athletes or athletes native to the country getting supported, getting that recognition because, as we know with Setubal, it's been iconic for so long as well. So great for the Portuguese for always fielding a strong and competitive team.
There was our defending champion from last year. Here is Dario Verani, currently sitting in the top four, actually sitting equal third in the overall series behind Logan Fontaine, Marc-Antoine Olivier, and Andrea Filadelli. All of those athletes racing today, but they will not have it their own way as they did last year, with names like David Bethlehem just walking through, looking really confident ahead of Ollie Clement, and he's also in fine form, Alice.
Yeah, Ollie Clement is. There's always such a threat coming from him. It's a fantastic racer, great skills, great speed, and you see Marc-Antoine Olivier walking out. He's my king of consistency.
Yeah,
Top five all the time, and then pretty much always on the podium. So it really is like a great lineup. It's great to see that. I think everybody's turned up for this. I really do think everyone's turned up for this. Last one before Singapore, we got Christoph Rosowski walking out. We just spoke about him before. Really going to be a fantastic race.
yeah. I always love watching the way that the athletes approach that final stage of their preparations as they get introduced, and no one is more confident than Christoph Rosowski. As we see the start list now, Rosowski will swim under cap number 5. That you got like, it definitely plays an impact in the race when you see Christoph just strutting down the start line now. There is so much confidence behind that man.
Definitely, as he should be. I think he's one of those athletes where we haven't always seen him perform at his best. So when he's back on it, he's going to be fighting for it, and it's. I really do think it's like a testing ground for worlds. It's a very different course, very different conditions, but still, if winning this, coming home with a medal, you can really carry some great energy and confidence into the World Championships, as well as fighting for those places in the rankings as well for the overall lead.
That's it. Only minutes away from the start of this race. Alice, as you mentioned, obviously, World Championships just around the corner. This race almost feels like house money. What is your prediction from today?
My prediction from today is I'm expecting a quick start with Logan Fontaine out in front, Marc-Antoine Olivier tucked behind that, Florian sitting in a comfortable 5th or 6th with Rosowski, and then I really think Florian's probably going to turn the gas on quite early on after the first lap.
There you have it. The tension now begins to build here in Setubal. 50 men, arms stretched over their pontoon, eyes forward, nerves steady. For some, this is cementing World Cup rankings. For others, it's proving they belong on this stage. The water lies still for now, but moments before the horn sounds, of course, this calm water will shatter into a flurry of water elbows and urgency. We're only moments away from the start of the men's 10 kilometers at stop 3 of the 2025 World Aquatics Open Water World Cup. Alice, it is time as they stare down this freshly minted course. You can only help but feel the anticipation on this starting pontoon. And they are underway. What a start that is. Setubal on show once more. A clean start across the pontoon. The lead pack will start to form in no time. Alice, take us through these opening phases. I'll hand over to yourself. It is absolute chaos as you make your way through this first 150 meters.
Yeah, the start is really one of those places where you say this all the time, Will, and I copy you. You can't win on the start, but you can definitely lose. And you just see the way the pack is kind of forming into these like different areas where you have the faster swimmers finding their clear water and going out, and then everybody else kind of trying to like fall in behind them. And it is really chaotic. You can lose so many places if you don't find yourself in the right positions going around the first buoy. So some swimmers really like to get out and go for it. Others like to kind of pace it out, tuck themselves in, and just find those gaps. And it is always in open water. Play to your strengths. Be proactive. Do what you can when you can. But the start is always so stressful and so exciting for spectators, but also for the athletes as well.
And it's almost remiss of us not to talk about it, Alice, but Setubal's held a World Cup since 2007. As I mentioned in the preamble, the city to host the most World Cups in open water history. But this is a brand new course. So all of the experience on the old course, and it was a very testing course, sort of goes out the door here as they have this 150 meter straight before the first turn.
Yes, it's super interesting that it has been moved, and we see the men starting at 11 a.m. local and the women starting at 5 p.m. local to coincide with the tides, and it's going to be really interesting to see what that does for the finish time, what that does to the tactic.
So here we have the first turn, and I mean we'll dive into it in a sec because we will keep this same format for the remaining races of the weekend, and there's a bit to unpack in that sentence, of course. But 150 meters into this first turn is utter chaos. Especially considering in years past, as you were discussing, Alice, it was about a 650 to 700 meters straight into the first can. So you were able to get much more sort of relaxed in the position of the pack, and you can see out in front, it's no surprise, in fact, Florian Walbrock leading the way. He does have some competition, and we did mention that we expected to see quite a bit of activity in this opening lap, but 150 meters is quite it's only new to the open water scene, at least in my perspective. It obviously features very heavily when we see those sprint laps starting to come in. The 3 kilometer knockout really loves the 150 meter straight in order to get that 500 meter final lap. So it's going to be something that these athletes have to get used to, but at this stage it would still be a very foreign concept. Am I right?
Yeah, that's such a good point. So, just commenting on the way that open water swimming has kind of developed. Sorry. Um, when I started out with it, it was typically 4 2.5K laps. And you would occasionally get maybe 5 laps, but traditionally you would do 4 laps. And as it's developed and evolved, it's kind of became into more turns, more excitement, and forcing the swimmers to be more dynamic instead of having these very long, drawn out straights. So now we see the typically at races it is 6 laps, 1.6K a lap, and of course the introduction of the 3K knockout, which we are both huge fans of, and I do really like the way that World Aquatics is constantly trying to evolve the sport. Is a very young sport still, if we're talking about it in the sense of the Olympic Games and the Olympic cycle. Of course, there is a history much longer and much longer than the Olympic Games. But if we're looking at the Olympic scope, it's still very young, only been introduced in 2008. So seeing the international governing body with World Aquatics keep evolving, keep changing it, and trying to get us more opportunities to race at the Olympic Games. Hopefully we see the relay in there one day. Hopefully the 3K knockout. Some really, really great and exciting ways of watching open water swimming. So, with the change of this course, it is just more reflection on World Aquatics recognizing that we want to keep moving the sport forward. We want to try new things and change things. Sometimes it might not always be right, I don't know a case that it isn't, but sometimes it might not always be right. But you can go back to something else and try something else. So 150 meter straight is one of those things where the athletes have got to get in, do it, and you see what the results end up being afterwards.
That is a great point, and I'm sure we're going to see that play out numerous times in this race. I think that is the evolution that's come alongside where World Aquatics is taking this sport. Is the athletes really, like the 10 kilometers is really turning into the marathon that we expected. There are so many twists and turns to a race, and often we'll look back on a call and see sort of us getting excited about something that happens in the opening lap that then 7 times has happened throughout the race as well. So it is very exciting to see where the racing has taken us. One of those points that I wanted to circle back on, Alice, is the comment around this sprint lap, the money lap, which is lap 1 as of 2025. In Ibiza, we saw an absolute catfight at the end of lap one where Logan Fontaine managed to swim through in the final stages, but it went four across, which is very rare to see, especially in the opening lap of a race. At the moment, we have a star-studded top five: David Bethlehem, Logan Fontaine, Marc-Antoine Olivier, Christoph Rozovsky, and of course Florian Wellbrock. This could be repeating itself here. There are a lot of fast boys at the start of the race, and no one really wanting to give an edge at the moment.
Yes, definitely. I was literally thinking, I'm sure Florian probably watched Ibiza and saw the chaos that was happening and thought, I'm not allowing that to happen when I raced in Setubal, because it was so chaotic. As you said, we had Logan Fontaine, the four across. Logan did end up tipping it out, I think, and it really set up the foreshadowing for the rest of the race, where it kind of, on the last lap towards the finish, descended into this chaos, and we saw Philadelphia, Varani, and Ilario find that outside line and manage to take home a triple for Italy on the podium. So I'm really expecting that. I don't think anything too chaotic is going to happen today. I don't think the likes of Bethlehem, Rozovsky, Florian, and Marc-Antoine are going to allow that to happen again.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, just as you say that. You can see Bethlehem and Florian sort of swimming close to each other, Florian in the middle, and then on the right of your screen currently, Christoph Rozovsky starting to move through. He's actually in probably the worst position coming into this upcoming turn can, with David Bethlehem in the best to get the quickest line around. But this racing really doesn't suit Florian. He does not like the physicality, and you can see the two Hungarians doing him an absolute favour at this point, just giving him some clear water to swim through. That's an interesting thing for a lot of spectators around the world, Alice. How can an athlete like Florian, who is one of the fastest open water swimmers, if not the fastest open water swimmer we've ever seen, not enjoy other people swimming around him?
Yeah, that's such a good and interesting point. I think it's one of those where Florian has came through open water swimming at a time where he has been able to revolutionize it and force people to swim to how he wants to swim, and that is because of his speed and endurance and tactical finesse. So he has been able to shape the men's race to be what it is today, and it has forced the likes of Rozovsky to come through and have to swim to Florian's beat, but then also has taken it to another level, as we saw at the Paris Games. So it is an interesting one where Florian kind of had his own way for a good number of years, and then the rest of the world have been like, hang on a second, we're not going to just constantly keep this allowing to happen. So we're now in a place where Florian is still like I think always one of the ones to beat, along with Rozovsky, but there are more people on his level who are able to bring it to him in this sense. So I think I love the fact that they are all allowing each other their own space. It shows the respect that they have for each other as athletes, and also just reflecting the fact that it's the first lap. Yes, we want to get that $1,000 on the going through the first lap timing gate, but at the same time, we still have a very long way to go. Let's be respectful of each other and not cause each other too much chaos. And I think just off the back of Ibiza, as we were saying, the chaos that did happen at the last lap, it's just really nice to see that sportsmanship and respect being shown across the board, definitely at the front. I can't say the same is probably happening at the back, as I personally know how difficult it can be in the middle towards the back with so many people. But what an interesting thing that's happening going around this buoy. This is because of the current, I believe. Yeah. It must be.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and it speaks to why there's such a big gap between both the men's and women's race this year. Setubal has some extremely big tidal changes, which obviously leads to some incredible currents which the athletes have to face. So what it also means is there's of all races, it's most advantage sitting towards the front, because one, the lines that the first athletes pick are often very hard to adapt to, but also there's so many more breaks that happen in Setubal than anywhere else on the circuit. And that's why we've seen so many different races that have been won by a sizable margin and not a sprint finish. So we'll be watching that as the race goes, and you'll also see, as we have this shot right now, or we just did with Christoph out in front, the change of pace. It looks really significant. It isn't that much to the athletes, it's just how the water moves around them as well. One thing I wanted to circle back on, though, Alice, was the comment around not only how much longer there is in the race after lap 1, but the significance of this race leading into the World Champs. We were talking to Coach Byrne, who is Florian and Ollie's coach from this race, and arguably the greatest coach in open water swimming currently, and he was saying these athletes are under extreme work. We know that Coach Byrne has his athletes under hard work, but to say extreme work, coming off some altitude training as well, they are going to be fit, but they may have, well, obviously the priority is certainly peaking in a month's time.
Yeah, just big shout out to Coach Byrne for sending this message to Will. And please, this goes out to any of the coaches or athletes that want to interact with us and, give us some insight into what's going on with athletes. We don't get those opportunities to hear from athletes often. It's not like a sport like football or NFL or something like that where, you're constantly having coaches doing press conferences and things like that. So anybody that wants to interact with us and tell us what they feel comfortable, please, we absolutely love it. We lap it up. But yes, just the extreme work, like I read it and I just got chills across my body because I know how hard this group works. Like, mentally and physically, the demands that they are put under are really, really challenging and really difficult. And then for him to say that it's like extra hard, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what were they doing? Like at altitude as well. It's so, of course, everything is gearing towards Singapore, and this is kind of a testing ground for them. This is actually their first time in the water as well. They hadn't done a training session in the water on this course,
Yeah.
since they arrived. So I really like this approach in the sense of it's the first year of the Olympic cycle. I think it's a great time to test things out, and I think this is probably what Bernd's doing. If I'm trying to get into the psyche and the mindset of this, is turn up to the competition. I'm going to put you under very stressful conditions of you've just off the back of altitude. There's going to be a lot of fatigue in your body. The water's like fairly cold, especially for I think for Ollie, who prefers it a bit warmer, and maybe for Florian. And we're not going to swim on it. We're going to see how you cope with those conditions. It's a really great opportunity to just kind of put your swimmers under different strains, mentally and physically, and see how well they perform off the back of it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because up until very recently, we would have said that these conditions really didn't suit Florian, but we saw the dominance that he displayed in Summer Bay on stop 1 this year, and that has somewhat changed our minds with the way that Florian likes to swim. That being said, today is very flat, which definitely suits the likes of Florian Wellbrock, but it's going to be, certainly a different strategy to not train on the course before you race. Here we have a bit of a fight coming down to end lap 1. As we said, the money lap is underway here. The leading swimmer, which is sort of the second from the left on your screen currently, Krzysztof Rozowski, on his left-hand shoulder is Marc-Antoine Olivier, and then on the inside is none other than David Bethlehem. I don't know who that is on the outside, Alice. It did say it was Florian. Doesn't look like his stroke. In fact, it looks like it may be who we saw in Ibiza in Logan Fontaine.
Potentially, if we get a repeat of Ibiza going into this going into this timing gate, oh gosh, because you just saw it happening. You saw it happening at Ibiza at the first lap, and I was texting my friend like, oh my god, this is aggressive. Like you could tell the energy that was being put out there was very statement making.
Yeah.
And swimmers pick up on this energy when you're swimming as well. You know how other people are swimming. It's swimming with intent and purpose. And if it's anything like Ibiza, if that also foreshadows the end of the race, we're going to be spoiled for the amount of action that we're having with this race.
Oh wow! This is actually
Yes.
pretty crazy. So on the left-hand side of your screen, it is Florian Walbrock. You have on the right-hand side that is David Bethlehem, and in the blue cap is Logan Fontaine. So there's a number of athletes in here that are all fighting for this water. We'll see what the reaction is coming off the back of lap one, but of course, this is the sprint lap, the money lap, where these athletes are all vying for that money. This is, of course, as Alice was saying, only a newly minted professional sport, and at the moment, we have three of the hungriest athletes really battling down this finish line. Who would have thought the end of lap one would be so exciting?
I absolutely love it. It's always like it's its own finish in its own right, and $1,000 is on the line, so it's one of those things where, you get in, you give it a go. If everything else falls apart in the race, you can still come away with $1,000,
Yeah.
which is really, really good money, for keeping your training and your funding up, and also, as I always say, showing your federation that you are worth funding, you're worth taking to these competitions, and we're really seeing this battle out. And I think you're
Yeah.
right with Logan
Here
Fontaine
comes
on the
Logan.
shoulder of
Oh my,
Bethlehem.
this is going to be chaos again. Like, there will be some words said after this race.
Yes.
This is gnarly. To finish off lap one, we have almost an identical position as to where we were in Ibiza. The only thing I would say is Christoph has the better spot this time. He is in the center of the field, and that's why he's pushing them so far away from these markers. He's really trying to dictate the line that these athletes take. But from that, it looks like Sashavelli's going to come up on the inside. So there's a big kick there from Marc-Antoine Olivier. There it is. Mr. Consistent. He knew when he was going to move away, and he's going to take this sprint lap with utter ease in the end and instantly turns it off. Here comes Florian.
That was really special. Just finding that those few extra strokes to really pick up the pace and go for it. He's definitely turned it off now, taking a nice long drink. That was, if any juniors are watching that, just take that in and know that it is all about biding your time with some of these things. He found the opportunity, took it, and now look, he's sat in the traditional place that Marc Antoine likes to sit. He's always just so consistent and so great at finding that space. And just going back to this as well, the French have had their national championships. They, off the back of it, have selected who is racing what at World Championships. I just want to say, firstly, I forgive the person who is swimming the 10K besides Marc-Antoine Olivier. I couldn't find out your name. If anybody knows, please, let us know. I was going off of the Marc-Antoine's Instagram to figure out who had qualified for what. Unfortunately, couldn't find the results myself. So Marc-Antoine got a triple crown at the French National Championships in the 10, the 3K knockout, and the 5K, which means he'll be swimming all three of those races at World Champs. Huge congratulations to him. And then we have Logan Fontaine. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I get this right. Logan Fontaine swimming the 3K knockout, and Sashavelli swimming the 5K. So such a strong team that the French are able to field, and the fact that Sashavelli and Logan Fontaine aren't in the 10K at World Championships is mind-blowing to me.
What a team. We always
Yes.
talk about the Italians being so strong, but there are so many other federations that are really putting their name up in lights on. Almost, it feels like we're at every single World Cup evolving which nation is the best. So it's an exciting time, as always, as we say, to be a fan of open water swimming, and that is coming to fruition once more. Alice, I did want to just circle back on the comments that you made about Marc-Antoine coming to that finish line. We often say with some of our younger athletes that may be watching around the world, but even not some of our younger athletes, if you're just wanting to learn more about open water swimming, it's always great to see the best in the world take to the water. One thing that I wanted to highlight, Marc-Antoine's change of speed as he came down that finish chute is something that he practices. That's not just because he wanted it more in that situation. How do you train that change of speed, specifically around the change in stroke rate that Marc sort of exhibited in the final stages of lap one there?
Oh, thank you. Well, that's such a good point. I just want to pick up on the fact that you said it's not because he wanted it more. I think sometimes swimmers and coaches can get wrapped up in this mindset of, oh, I won because I wanted it more, or I lost because the other person wanted it more than me. That's not always the case. Sometimes people are doing things in training that you can't even imagine. And in the case of Marc-Antoine Olivier, I know he's done a fair bit of altitude this year, and again, judging from his Instagram, I think he's with Fred Vano, who
Yeah, that's
was
right.
Maria Belmonte's coach. And they do some really, really tough and challenging training. Not crazy, crazy, crazy high volume that we see other programs compete under, but typically at 70, 80K, but doing some really tough threshold and heart rate sets. And this can really set up a great opportunity for you to be able to sit at that really high, 61, 60 pace per 100, and then just find those extra moments to be able to drop down and just find 1 or 2 seconds over 100 meters. And that's all he needed to be able to make a little gap between himself and the rest of the field to get forward and go. So, like you said, it's not luck, it's not wanting it.
It's a great point, Alice. As we have this wider shot, it's something that we're going to keep in mind throughout today's race, and I want athletes, or I want spectators around the world, in fact, to keep that in mind as we get ready for Singapore. Specifically, as we've talked about earlier, this is the first year of a new Olympic cycle. So there are a number of athletes that would have been peaking in a 4-year cycle last year in Paris. Some of them it worked for, in Christophe currently leading the race, and unfortunately for some it didn't. Like Florian, who's currently sitting in second, and Leonie Beck had a similar experience on the women's side. Both Florian and Leonie have sort of reacted to it feels very rough saying almost disappointment, but I'm sure they would both be fine with me sharing that. The disappointment from not performing as you would have wished at the Olympics. Leonie's taking a year off to focus back on training and enjoying the sport and everything. Florian's doubled down and has come back in absolutely fantastic form. So there's way more than it goes into performing at every race or every world champs or every 2 years. It really is part of a much bigger cycle leading into those Olympic Games. And it's such a rough ride to be on, especially as an athlete where you don't perform well, but when it all comes together, there's nothing more special in the world.
That's so true. There are many different ways of approaching the sport, whether that is taking time to allow yourself to digest and process disappointment and sometimes success. Success can be as challenging to handle mentally. Especially off the back of the Olympic Games, it's everything that you gear towards for 4 years, potentially your life, if it's your only opportunity to race there. So, it's such a great point to see how two athletes have dealt with that, and whether that's like bouncing back, going straight back into it, or discovering new things. One athlete who we have seen be consistently successful is Sharon Van Rooyendaal, who is taking a break at the moment. I saw her like post a picture on a beach somewhere warm. I feel like it was the Caribbean. I don't know if I'm just making that up, like quite recently. So it's great to see that she's taking time for herself. She's been doing her training camps and as in like coaching other swimmers on training camps and finding other things in the sport that excite her. And I really hope that we see her back in next year. That would just be another really fun dynamic to add back into it, that Sharon Van Roendaal's back. And yeah, sorry, but that's obviously about the women's race. But
Yeah, yeah.
in terms of the men, we don't typically see men take time away, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we're missing Domenico Atarenza this
Oh, of
year,
course,
but
yes.
that isn't necessarily from time off, but more so recovering from injury.
Injury.
So But I mean, it's been such a, as it has been for the entire world, it's been such a unique couple of years since COVID, and the way that it's impacted the swimming world is we haven't really seen many athletes retire. In fact, that's part of why the sport is in such a healthy spot at the moment, is because of the professionalization that's come into it. We're seeing athletes last a lot longer as athletes, and what that means is the new generations coming through, and the field just keeps getting deeper. And that's why we can see what we see today. This pace that Florian's laying down here in lap two, a couple of years ago, there would be, I mean, you would have been racing in a field of around 20 to start the race, but there would only be a couple of athletes being able to hold the pace. And at the moment, we've got a lead group of about 35-ish.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a really great shot before of Florian Rozovsky and Bethlehem, like kind of all swimming next to each other. It happened maybe like 3 or 4 minutes ago, and the variety in the three different stroke techniques that you're able to see in that shot. I really recommend when the race is over, go back, have a look. It would have been at about 24, 23 minutes or so. And it was just so fantastic to see that this sport is able to platform so many different styles of swimmers. Whereas typically in the pool, there's kind of one set technique for every stroke besides breaststroke, I would say. And you kind of have to swim to that technique if you want to get into a world championship final. And sometimes not everybody's going to be able to get that right. And so they might not be able to be the best that they can be. But in open water swimming, you are able to field your own kind of unique front crawl, and it works for so many different people in that way. So you've got Florian Rozovsky and Bethlehem, who are all Olympic medalists, swimming in very different styles with very different body types, and the same is reflected against the women's as well. So it's just another fantastic reason that I love this sport is it really is able to allow a diversity of swimming stroke, and if you're willing to put in a type of work, you can get to like a decent level in it.
How are these waves that are coming across the field
Oof.
now, Alice? I think this is I mean, one of the benefits of racing here in Setubal is it is an active port. So every now and then, and I know you've got your own personal experience with this, is you get a big tanker moving through, and it can create chaos that you would not have any idea of whilst you're actually racing.
I absolutely love that you said benefits. Like, what if the benefits? I just, yeah, I need to find it. I'm gonna dig through my phone and see if I can find this video. I've raced on this course. I think it was back in 2017 that this video was taken, and we're swimming, and all of a sudden you feel these massive waves that went on for minutes. Like, it was constant. It got to the point where I was like, this is actually silly. Like, what is happening? You start looking around and you see this massive tanker moving across the back of the course, and it wasn't that far away from us. And then you see this video afterwards, and I got out and I asked my coach, like, what happened there. He showed me the video of this big tanker just moving across the course. I was like, oh, okay, that's why we were struggling. So I guess it is a benefit, you know. It adds dynamics to the race. It forces the swimmers to have to be adaptive. And just, I want to come back to this with Florian sitting at the front. I think I said in Soma Bay that he won that race, and it's not traditionally the race we would see him like to race in or win. And I said I think it's a moment that the world is looking at, and we're kind of like, okay, Florian knows how to race in water that isn't exactly going to be like the easiest to swim in. And we're seeing this play out now. I think he's really came into a next step, potentially off the back of the Olympic Games, where it was the most challenging open water swim that I think we've seen on the elite circuit. And it probably put him in a position that he didn't like in many ways. And he's came into this now saying, I'm going to race in every kind of water. And you just don't know what I think we've got an idea of what the course for LA will be like, but I don't know what the conditions of the water will be. So as open water athletes, you have to be very oh my gosh, what's the word, like dynamic, adaptable. You have to be very adaptable to the conditions of the course.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and I mean, a credit to the way that these athletes sort of develop I think we see the young talent that comes through, like David Bethlehem, and you're just asking for him to make these next steps in order to get consistently on the podium, and then through that becomes a requirement to do it in all waters, and that's the next challenge. And there's just so many levels to it, and what we're seeing right now with Florian leading the race, he's just mastered everything that's required at this stage to be an open water expert. And when you get to watch him, he is so special. So right now we've got a bit of a masterclass going on. I do want to dive into Florian, but just quickly updating our listeners. Yellow flag on swimmer number 14, which is Dario Varani. The reason that holds such significance is, of course, Varani really races quite strong, especially through the second half of the race. The phrase that we've termed this year, and sort of true from years previous as well, is the race on the last lap is wherever Dario Varani starts. So essentially he'll move through from 14, 15 deep and get himself onto the podium most times. So if he's got a yellow flag, that's definitely going to not only carry some weight through the next couple of laps, but he'll be swimming quite cautiously, trying to avoid that red. But moving back to Florian, Alice, it is an interesting point to see that he's decided to move through on lap 2 and try and control some of this pace. As we mentioned in lap 1, they are under some significant work at the moment, and what you would not be wanting is for Florian to control the pace the whole way through and essentially just try and drop people methodically as he currently is doing.
Yeah, that's so true. I just want to take it back to that boy real quick. That is the benefit of being able to sit at the front. You saw Florian kind of peel round it, pick up the current, and able to find his own space. And he actually ended up creating like a body length gap, which everybody has had to work quite hard to fill. And you just see Rozovsky coming up alongside him now, as you said, like perfectly predicted. Will, you do not want to let Florian control this pace. You kind of need to make things difficult for him. You need to like bring the race to him and showcase that yes, you're very fast, but we can also keep up with you now as well. So I got Florian in front, Rozovsky just swimming off to the side of him, both allowing each other to have their water. Oh no, sorry, it's not Rozovsky, sorry, my bad, it's David Bethlehem. Also, big shout out to David Bethlehem for always racing in the bottom, just the bottom half, not having the top half. It makes it so much easier to tell the difference between himself and Rozovsky. And also, you've just got Ollie Clement sat in behind him, and I think the white hat might be Ivan from America. I did see him swimming quite high up at one point, so I don't know if that is still him. But and you'll have Logan Fontaine, Marc-Antoine Olivier. They're all going to be sat in there. So the fact that Rozovsky's pulled up alongside Florian, I think it's just indicating to Florian that hey, we're all still here. You're putting in a fast effort, but we're keeping up.
That's it. That's all it requires, is just putting a little bit of physicality on it. Obviously, it's better to sit in second, third, fourth in the pack than it is to be leading, but every now and then you just have to know that let Florian know that he doesn't have it all his own way. And I think, underrated part of an athlete when they are in work is a little bit of self-doubt. Like, everyone talks about the physical pressure you're under when you're working really hard and training, but there's also an emotional toll. There's the little voice in the back of your head gets a little bit louder when you are already hurting from training that says you aren't ready to race today. And by putting that physical pressure on, it's not necessarily beating Florian up, but it's saying, hey, you won't have this race your own way, and that will just sort of work at degrading Florian's presence in this race.
Yes, that's so true. I would say this sport, open water, is honest. Is it too bold to say 80% mental? Is it too bold to say that?
Not at all.
I really think it is so. It's such a challenging event mentally. Of course, physically, it is really hard as well. But the likelihood is these swimmers, every single one of them, have been swimming competitively since they were at the eldest 10 years old. And as you progress through the sport, you start to pick up more sessions, you pick up more volume, you realize you're good at distance swimming, whether you like it or not, and you start to buy into it, you start to put those meters in the pool. And most of the time, most athletes can really cope with, your bodies can cope with doing these meters. But the bit that most people start to fall down on is the mental aspect of, can I actually do this volume? Can I actually swim 10K? Can I actually compete with the rest of the world? Can I bring this race to Florian? So it's such a great point that you said, like, challenging people in a race doesn't always have to come physically in open water. A lot of younger athletes think that that's the case, and I remember coming up through the system, and you would see I'd see other people from my country kind of get into races and think, okay, I need to be physical with these athletes, and I was always like, oh my gosh, no, that is not how it works. You actually see, I don't know if you caught it on screen there, it's just, how do I describe it? There's a blue hat, a black hat, and a white hat, and I don't know who they were, but someone kind of grabbed somebody else and like kind of pulled them under. I don't know if the officials have spotted it. It was very quick, but you don't have to approach races like that. As I've been saying throughout this race at the start, you see these swimmers just giving each other the respect that they deserve, having their own space, allowing them to just battle it out, and see who the fastest swimmer is at the end of the day. And that is what our sport is about.
Yeah, that's a great. We saw at the end of lap one a lesson for the youngsters, and Alice has just given another one as we look through the end of lap two. Bethlehem leaves Wellbrock Puskovic, as you mentioned, Alice, sitting in third. That's a great start to the race for him. Veli, Clement, Rozovsky, Giordano, Philadelphia, Shimori, and Joey Tepper rounding out the top 10. Very quick top 10 as we keep looking through. Only 5 seconds separating them. Interesting to note that lap was a full minute and a half slower than lap one, so the pace has come out ever so slightly. You can see that with the likes of Marc-Antoine Olivier sitting back in 14th position. So there are some big names. Interesting to keep note on Dario Varani, as we said. That is usually where the race starts on the final lap, but still some massive names rolling through this pack, and the race is in good standings at the moment. Bethlehem still managing to hold the lead ahead of Florian Wellbrock, but of course, Alice, there is much more left in this race today.
Yes, definitely. And just want to shout out Kaito Tsushimori. Has had a great junior career, saw him race really well at the Junior World Championships, taking home the gold in the 3K knockout. He was our first ever 3K knockout winner, so huge congratulations to him. And I say this so much about Japan. It's one of those countries which I'm just kind of like really want to highlight, as they have invested in their athletes to take them to competitions, to give them racing opportunity. And yes, all the time they might not have always been, punching into the top 10, or they had a really great start and maybe fell off towards the back end of the race, but they haven't been discouraged by those results. They've brought them back, they've given them more opportunities, and you can see this amazing linear progression where both on the men's side and the women's side, they're having some really fantastic races. So you've seen Tsushimori sit up in 9th place, I believe he rolled through there, and he sat in front of Marc-Antoine Olivier. So really sat with these guys and getting that experience of being like 4 seconds behind Florian Wellbrock and David Bethlehem, and it's such a valuable and great experience that I think he's only 19 years old as well, so really young. And looking towards LA, he's going to be one of those real prospects to be an upset. I really think to be an upset in terms of who we expect to get the medals.
Yeah, that speaks to exactly what we were talking about earlier with these older statesmen or more experienced statesmen of the sport not choosing to retire. We'd be looking historically at LA would be David Bethlehem and Sasha Veli's race, and now the likelihood is that they have to look to 2032 and beyond to be the ones that are going to be dominating, because unfortunately for those athletes, Christoph Rozovsky, Marc-Antoine Olivier, Florian Wellbrock, they're not going anywhere. And what that's meaning is it's exciting to see who's going to dominate the next 4 years. I guess, question without notice, Alice, but from your perspective, who is that athlete that's going to dominate the sport leading into LA?
That's such a good question. I don't know. You know, it's really one of those fun things where you've got, it could be Florian still, it could be Rozovsky still, it could be very. Marc-Antoine Olivier has been winning medals at World Championships level since 2017, and we're looking towards the 2028 games. So we're talking Marc-Antoine Olivier having 11 years of podium experience. We're not even talking about like world champion experience. We're talking about world championships experience. Sorry, we're talking about podium experience. That's something else that we only have really seen in the women's race when we're looking at Anna Marcela Cunha. Um, so when we're translating that over to the men's race, I honestly don't know what it holds because um, there are so many different approaches to this in terms of you do have the youngsters coming up who are hungry for it, who you got David Bethlehem here who isn't allowing Marc Antoine Olivier not sorry isn't allowing
Sasha
Florian
Valley.
Wellbrook and yeah, and Sasha Valley sat on his sat on his feet, sorry, isn't allowing Florian to have it his own way. So I actually don't know. This could be. It's so many different people's game. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's sort of why I asked you the question. I don't actually know myself. Apologies. But I mean, you look at the way that Christoph was just so dominant last year. He took the gold in the 10 and the 5 kilometer. Oh, sorry, just the 10 at World Championships. Of course, Logan Fontaine took the 5, but he was so dominant in the 5 as well. And then he was so incredibly powerful at the Olympics. And I just think that he timed his run perfectly there. And I can't imagine that he has, well, one, that we can't discount him to find that form again, but also I can't imagine that he's going to be able to dig to the same depths as what was required to perform like that. So with that in mind, I, it's almost, I think it's going to be someone new. By the time we get to LA, I think it will be a new athlete that we don't even consider. And I mean, you look at the way that the Italians have really come through, and admittedly, like, they're no spring chickens. Dario Verani is he's had a long apprenticeship to get to the point where hopefully he is representing Italy at these World Championships. But I look at the likes of Giuseppe Ilario, who made it onto the podium for the first time, and I think it's going to be an Italian. That's my answer. Half the field,
I love
unfortunately,
that.
but I think it's going to be an Italian.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about them yet properly this race, but as I always say, when you beat one Italian, there is another Italian ready to take their place. It is really the most competitive and dynamic scene that I've ever seen, definitely in swimming. In sport, for an individual sport as a whole, it's really something else that we don't typically see in terms of the depth that they are able to field. They have, definitely on the men's side and even on the women's side, you've probably got 8 people who in each race could reasonably finish in the top 20 at world championships. And you can only take 2 people. So how do you do that? How do you work that out? It's so competitive. It's even to the point where we see Gregorio Paltrinieri, who unfortunately isn't racing here today. He finished fourth at the recent European Championship, so great to see him back on that. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it's going to come out in the coming days, I'm sure of it. So keep your eyes peeled on both, of course, the World Aquatics page or socials, as well as the Italian Swimming Federation's socials and page, because obviously the benefit of Greg is he can sneak onto the team in the pool. He is one of the fastest ever 1500 meter swimmers, and I'm sure if he's there representing Italy in the pool, he'll find his way over. And I guess, Alice, we haven't dove too deep into the depths of this specific topic, as we hear almost a symphony of rings there from the official telling them to separate, which means the paces come out ever so slightly. So I'm a little surprised about that. We have had a number of yellow cards come out so far, but obviously Greg would be hoping to, if he is selected, race in that 3 kilometer knockout. But what it's enabled is another race at the World Championships, another opportunity for our athletes to show just how good they are, but also an opportunity for the 1500 meter swimmers, the pool swimmers, to come across and try their hand in open water swimming. And I know you're friends with a Sorry, I was just saying, Alice, I know you're friends with a few of the leading GB swimmers that might be in contention to race in the open water as well, and I just wondered if you had any inside goss on that.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm not sure. Unfortunately, we see Hector Podo not racing today. He did tell me he had some illness at the start of this week, so decided to take the moment to rest up, and didn't want to come in and put himself in a position where you're ill, you're recovering from illness, and you're not able to race the standard and the caliber that you can race at. So I'm hoping he has a speedy recovery. Of course, want to see him at the World Championships. I have been asking him if he's going to do anything more than the 10K. I'm hoping that they do. It's always a great opportunity. You're flown all the way over to Singapore. You might as well race a little bit more. You know what I mean? And the likes of Dan Whiffen as well. Really, really love to see him take on the 3K knockout. I think the one drawback we have this time with open water swimming in terms of the program is that it is before all of the pool racing. So in Paris, you had that kind of perfect setup where you had all of the pool racing and then afterwards the open water race, which meant you had a lot of pool swimmers who qualified in the 8 and the 15 able to hop over and say, I'll stick around in Paris for a few more days to do the 10K. It's not my main event, but I'll give it a go. Unfortunately, I think just with the way the program is, we might not see as many pool swimmers get into the open water this time round. And I guess that's just the nature of it and how things have worked out. But it'd be really cool to see some people try and take on that 3K knockout, because there's still a large enough gap. It's quite a big gap in between the end of the open water racing and the start of the pool racing. You have a good week at least, I believe. So that is plenty of time to recover, continue your taper, etc. And also the 3K knockout, I think, is the perfect taper. It's a perfect taper session, to be honest, for a distance swimmer. I know there might be some sprinters listening thinking, oh my god, that's not taper. But I think, just thinking back what kind of made me swim well, I think it would hit all of the right zones. You get that real good aerobic hit in terms of aerobic in threshold, really, really high level threshold in the 1500 and the 1K. And then that 500 is a pure sprint for the men and the women that will be competing in it. So please, if any federations watching, I know it's probably getting a little bit late to start thinking about entering that 3K knockout for your pool swimmers, but I mean, it would be fantastic, and it's another world medal opportunity.
It's certainly something that is going to evolve. I think we saw that last year with Dan with him trying his hand at the 10K, as you mentioned, Alice, and that's probably the hardest introduction to open water swimming you could possibly imagine.
Yes.
So we certainly recommend giving it another shot in Singapore, where the water's going to be a bit more, it's going to be a bit warmer, but it's also going to be a bit more calm than what we saw in Paris. So by all means, if you're listening, Dan, you're welcome back, and we'd be pleased to have you, and hopefully your federation gives you that shot. I guess, if you are an open water swimming fan, Alice, listening in around the world, why some swimmers in open water, Florian Welbach, Gregoria Pachineri, as we've mentioned, but also the likes of Moesha Johnson, and of course, I've gone complete blank, sorry, from the US, 154.9, 200 freestyler, Claire Weinstein. Oh, that is an absolute buffle by myself, so apologies for that.
Oh, no stress. And we have a lot of names to remember. Yeah. We do.
but those athletes, they manage to race in the pool and open water, so how come it's not always the other way around?
such a good point. So I think, as I was kind of saying, with it being 80% mental, open water requires a very specific mental state, which not all distance swimmers have. And I've seen some fantastic 1500 swimmers, especially at junior level, get in, give open water swimming a go, and finish well below their capabilities and say, I'm never doing that again. And as I was going through the sport, I kind of realized like this really isn't for everybody. It's very challenging to go from a pool condition of the 1500 where you have your own water, clear space, and turn up to an open water race where you might not be the fastest, you might not be prepared to put down all of your speed at the start. And so you end up in this wash at the back where, somebody's catching your elbow every other stroke. You've got someone sat on your hip, someone's constantly touching your feet. And this is where like freak out and say I'm not doing that again. So in terms of the Paris Games and again, Dan, if you are listening and watching, please give it another go. I do believe Nathan Whiffen, his twin brother, is swimming the same course next week in a Len Cup. So it'll be really interesting to see how he gets on. Best of luck to him. Best of luck to all of the swimmers swimming in that Len Cup as well. But yes, so we are very. It is really interesting to see how different pools swimmers do take to this event, and it's just so different from everything else.
And that's why we love it, Alice. It is so different, and every race is different, and every field is different as well. As you mentioned, the Len Cup next week will provide something completely different to what we see this weekend, but also completely different to what we witnessed last year at the Olympics. So we'll be sure to keep our eyes on that. But for now, we turn our attention back to the men's field here in Setubal. This is the end of lap 3 coming up. We're about halfway done, and at the moment it is a consistent sight. Florian Welbrock out in front, looking absolutely fantastic ahead of the field. He has a very formidable competition sitting just behind him. Christoph Rozovsky, David Bethlehem, the two Hungarians sitting in nicely. They both raced well at the recent European Championships. Hungary, in fact, taking out the national title for that meet. Alison, as a European yourself, it does mean a lot for these federations being able to claim those titles, but of course there is a very big title looming in a couple weeks. Who will be that top federation at the World Championships for open water?
Oh yeah. Just a big shout out to Hungary. Had a great European Championships, just as you said. Took out that title, and just consistently showcasing great talent at, like, on the Rozovsky level and the David Bethlehem level, but also that those youngsters coming up. We saw, I'm sure we'll see her in the 10K as well later today in the women's race, but Victoria, who finished first in the 10K at the European Championships, and we also saw her in Ibiza towards the end of the race, punching through and having a really good showing, and just really excited to see what her future holds. Already now European champion and still very young. So, but looking forward to Singapore in terms of top teams. We have Germany, France, Hungary, Australia, who I think, and Italy, of course. There's kind of top 5 teams that I don't know where this could go. Like it really, the potential across the board there is really, really exciting and really spicy.
Well, yeah, and there's a number of challenging federations as well that really would have ambitions to be considered as a top one. You've got the US, who are just so strong on the women's side. The same with Spain and the Brazilians. They've invested significantly into their athletes getting more experience at World Cups, and we've seen that pay dividends in the last couple of years with both the junior titles for last year going to Brazil, and we've seen Matthias Maletti really continue his hot streak of form at the start of this year. So there are a couple of years ago, you could name 3 to 4 federations that would be willing to compete at the very top. And now, we look at that relay, it's going to be deep all the way to somewhere around 10th, in my opinion.
It's so true. It is so true. The level of expertise and, you know, kind of commitment that a lot of federations have brought to open water swimming to recognise another great Olympic medal, but also at World Championships we now have 4 really highly competitive and fast races. Kind of crazy that the fact that 10K is now like it, the slowest race in terms of um, you don't have to be like the fastest swimmer to get in and be able to do it. Whereas before, you had the 25K, which was much more drawn out and allowed the opportunity for those swimmers who could sit at that kind of burning pace. But now 10K is the furthest distance, so it's just forced the sport to go in a very like fast and speedy way. We saw this coming with Florian Wellbrock, and now in the women's race we see it with Louise Johnson, I believe. So yeah, as you said, I mean, any finishing top 8 or top 10 at World Championships at any level in any race is is very very good showing, and the way that the sport has came on in terms of the relay and also the 10K, also the 5K, also the 3K knockout. We have so many fantastic races to look forward to.
Yeah, and every one of them is going to be another sort of opportunity for all of the athletes to show just how good they are. I think you look back as we're talking about Victoria from Hungary, who's really made her name known over the last couple of months. That is someone that we would have no idea about as a rising star 12 months ago, is now a European champion. And she won the 10 kilometres, but was then silver in the 5 kilometres. So it is incredibly difficult to back up race to race. One of those key things that we have to highlight is we've seen some swimmers claim a double gold medal at World Champs. We saw it last year with Sharon Van Rondaal taking the 10 and the 5. It's incredibly difficult, or it has been, to claim the triple, the 10K gold, 5K gold, and the relay. I believe back in 2023 we saw that done by both Florian Wellbrock and Leonie Beck. Obviously helps that they swim in the same relay team, but when do you think the first time we'll see someone take the 4 gold medals, and do you think there's a potential we see it this year?
That is difficult. That is really, really difficult because, whilst there are days off, it's still a very concise schedule in terms of, you have the 10K, I think you get maybe 2 days off, and then you've got like 5K, 3K knockout relay. It is very like bam, 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 and this is what these swimmers train for. So, and again, this is where the mental aspect comes in. There's fatigue in your body, there's fatigue in your opponent's body. You have to be able to put that aside and still get in and do your job. So, I don't know that the nation that I think Germany is going to take home the relay gold. I'm putting it out there now, but
Oh,
whether
that's
it
a
is a
big
big
call.
statement, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's a big statement.
Fair
We'll
enough.
see. We'll see whether I think that. We'll see whether I think that on
Yeah,
the actual
yeah,
day. I'm just putting the team together in my head, and I'm like,
yeah. No,
just with
fair enough.
Florian and Ollie,
And
but then,
Isabel
yeah,
Grosse.
yes. Oh my gosh, how can? Yeah, she did a fantastic in Soma Bay. And sorry, we'll pull it back to this race real,
Yeah.
real quick with Florian just showcasing this work that they are putting down. And the pack's still quite heavy. It's still about 35 deep, so only about 15 swimmers have been dropped off the pace. But it is really burning out, and you constantly see him kind of draw away. And then everyone kind of like bunches back together, but he keeps like finding this space, and then it's like an elastic band, and it lets go. But I think there will be a point where the elastic band just keeps stretching, and it keeps stretching, it keeps stretching. That's what Florian's so good at, and I think they're just swimming into the current now, and with all these waves, but his stroke just kind of cuts over the top of it. He still looks so smooth, and you've got Rozovsky, where it's just. Sorry, just look at the 2 different kind of strokes that we see there. We've got Rozovsky. I think that is that Sasha Vogt, or is that an American hat? in Ivan
I think
and
it's Sasha. I think
is
you're
it
right
Sasha?
there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you've got Ivan in the white USA hat sat behind, and David Bethlehem, who, again, thank you for not having a top half on. It's always really easy to pick you
Yeah.
out. Sat next to Ivan as well. So just kind of take this in for a moment. Look at the different stroke techniques that you can see across the board. Kind of got Florian with that textbook cuts through the water, glides so beautifully. Then you've got like a kind of like a choppier, stronger, more open water traditional stroke with Rozovsky, and similar to Sashavelli as well with shorter arms. But it's just so great to see these swimmers really utilizing their personal strengths, and this is where we are seeing things being brought to Florian. You've got two swimmers sat on his hip. You know, Sashavelli's a tall guy, Rozovsky's very strong, and this is not what Florian will like, I think. But this is, I also love this of Florian in the sense of it's putting him under discomfort. And it's one of those things where the more he's under discomfort, the more I think he's just going to rise to it. He's not the kind of person to shy away and back down. And like I've kind of been alluding to it, but I just think this is going to unlock something else in him that when we get to LA, he would have had all of this kind of training, physical and mental prep, and I think it will just it will bring something else that we haven't seen in Florian before.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think. What do you think the advice would have been from Coach Byrne to Florian? And let's not forget Ollie in this race. He's unfortunately just having a bit of a tougher time sitting further back. Actually, we'll park that for now. This is a very important move here from Krzysztof Rozovsky. We spoke about those different strokes of these athletes, Alice, and what we're seeing right now is where Krzysztof is really strong, swimming into the chop, and often amateur athletes will think that the best way to break away from a field is when you're swimming with the current, but it's actually the opposite. You want to be swimming into the current because it's much harder to pick up moves and jump across when there is momentum behind an athlete. So Krzysztof Rozovsky clearly swimming with intent this far out. He would also be under significant workload at the moment, so this could be a very meaningful lap here from Krzysztof Rozovsky as he's taken the lead. But Alice, as well, we've seen David make this move and put Florian under a bit of pressure. This is where that federation rivalry really starts to kick in, when you can rotate moves between each other, and this is clearly Krzysztof's move.
Yeah, that's such a good point. We have seen Christoph and Florian kind of working in this way since the Tokyo Olympics. And just the again, I'm just stressing the level of respect that we're seeing here. And Florian's kind of, I don't know if he's let it happen in the sense of he hasn't taken his foot off the pedal, but Rozovsky's really trying to charge through here. I think this is where Rozovsky wants to make his move. He might have looked towards the back of the pack and thought, hang on a second, there's a lot more people here than I'd actually like to deal with. Um, Not that it would be an issue for him, but you just kind of want to put some strain on the pack, especially if you're the caliber of swimmers like Rozovsky, like Florian, and mitigate that chance of anyone like an Ollie Clement coming over the top of you in that finish. And it takes the race into his own hands, especially as we're like over halfway through now, starting to draw towards the end. It's the race is probably going to finish in 1 hour 49, 1 hour 50, so very quick, especially considering the conditions of the race with, some wind chop and the currents that they're having to deal with. But taking us back to Paris real quickly, I know that Rozovsky and Bethlehem both trained in the Danube River to get used to the currents, to get used to the strain that that's going to put on your body. So we're honestly just seeing him thrive in these conditions of having to deal with currents and waves. And you look at the swimmers now with all this chop coming across them. It's really challenging. And just again, want to stress, Florian, I think he's doing really well in these conditions. I'm talking about him as if he can't swim in this,
Yeah.
but we just traditionally see him not, well, just avoiding these races altogether. And I absolutely love that he's putting himself in these positions, still in such a comfortable position, and seeing that his stroke technique and he's very capable of doing this. And this is what I'm saying. Like he's really unlocking something within himself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you are so right. In years previous, Setubal, whilst it's been on the scene since 2007, it's often one of the races that most athletes avoid. Remember, I raced this back in 2019, and we had a field of about 27 in the race, and then
Wow.
the week later we were racing in Hungary out of Lake Balaton, and we had 70 odd athletes racing. So often we would see the likes of Florian, among others, choosing not to race in conditions like today. But how's this for a business trip? Florian and his team, and no disrespect to his team there, to call them Florian's team, but Florian and his team arrived in Portugal yesterday in Lisbon, drove down to Setubal. They race today and they return back to altitude tomorrow, getting ready for the final couple of weeks of training. That is an ultimate business trip.
Wow, going back up to altitude. This is yeah, I just again just I that mentally from sorry, I'm playing on the mental side so much because I know that was the main thing that I struggled as an athlete. I'm just really trying to wrap my head around the fact that this is really just we turn up, we have a job to do, we're gonna get in, we're gonna race, it's gonna be difficult, and then we go back up to altitude and we continue all of that work. And this is all gearing up towards the World Championships. So, um, yeah, really, really so impressive to the way that they consistently turn up and race. And um we haven't seen like sorry, all of the podiums at the World Cups that we've had so far this year have had a swimmer from Burnt Squad on it. it, it's really just that kind of depth and excellence that you've come to expect from that training group.
Yeah, and I mean, and it speaks even further to the depth of not just pool swimming, not just open water swimming as well. They've been so strong to start this year in the pool. You look at Isabel Gosset, but also you know one of arguably the hottest swimmers in the world right now, Lucas Martins, the 400 freestyle world record holder. They must be doing some serious work, and I mean credit to everyone else for you know making the racing as interesting as it's been, because it's been far more dominant in the pool than it has been in the open water, and that's with all due respect to all the other athletes in the open water field that are really putting it to the test. And we can see that once more here with Krzysztof Rozovsky just leading the way as they come down to finish the halfway mark of lap 4. Alice, it's an interesting time for open water swimming, as we've noted, specifically with regards to the World Championships just sitting less than a month away now. And, the work that Christoph would be under, and as we've talked about with Florian as our two leaders of this race, for a lot of other federations, or for some federations, they still may be selecting their team. We're still yet to see the Italians select their representatives to be racing in Singapore. So you look deeper into the field, the likes of Dario Verani, Andrea Filadelli, Giuseppe Ilario, Marcelo Guidi, just to name a few. They could all still be vying for positions, and if that's the case, they will obviously be bringing a lot more, a lot less load into the race, a lot more speed into the race. And do we think with that potential speed at the end of the race would be playing into the minds of both Christoph and Florian, and that's hence why they've decided to keep the pace so hot through the opening laps.
Yeah, this is such a good point. So, just because this is the last race before the World Championships doesn't mean everybody's at the same point in their season. So, I don't know what the Hungarian selection policy is, but I imagine Krzysztof Rozovsky is racing at the World Championships. Um, we know that Florian and the German team were selected way back in February in Soma Bay. So everybody's kind of going to have to approach this from different angles. And as you said, I don't know what the Italian selection policy is, but we're confident it hasn't been selected yet. So it will definitely mean that the Italians are, as always, because there are so many of them, competing against themselves for these spaces. And that does bring a different dynamic to the race, because as you saw in Ibiza with Philadelphia Ferrari and Alario finding that outside lane and taking what they could and coming away with a clean podium. Um,
We'll have to wait and see how that plays out, Alice. At the moment, we can see a little bit of separation opening up here between Christoph, Florian, and then third position. There is currently a bit of a battle happening for who's going to take the reins in third. Expect that to be shut down very quickly. You can see Marc-Antoine Olivier sort of on the edge of your screen on the right side, just battling to grab the feet of Florian. Whilst this mightn't change the overall positions at the end of the race, what it does is send shockwaves down the pack. And as you're talking about Alice previously being an athlete that sits towards the back as a junior, that can absolutely shred you this far into a race.
Yeah, it's this is where like everything's gearing up. You're approaching the second to last lap. This is where you typically really have to start positioning yourself in the right places, or else you can get caught out towards the end and, just end up behind someone who is slower, that isn't able to keep the feet of the swimmer in front of you, and then all of a sudden you have to bridge a 10-meter gap, and then you bridge that gap and you're still at the back of the front pack. So for those younger athletes in the field, for those who might not be as experienced or might not have, or might just be under a lot of fatigue, as we're saying, everybody's at different points in the season at this point. This is where it's going to really start testing that training and how fit you are.
So plenty to keep an eye on as we continue to watch the lead of our race, Krzysztof Rosowski. An interesting thing to note is Krzysztof will want to hold this position all the way until the upcoming 2 turn cans. He wants to head back out into this current that this course is providing as the race leader, and if he's able to do so, expect to see some more gaps starting to form. There is a strong contingent racing from the US today. We've seen Ivan Puskovich really near the front of the race and really doing a great job. It was interesting, as part of the athlete experience this year, we've got a lot closer a look into the way that our athletes prepare for these races, and it was great to see a bit of banter between some of the athletes ahead of Ibiza. They voted Ivan Puskovich as the athlete that would post the most about a race, so credit to Ivan for getting the good word out there, and good to see him swimming so strongly today.
Yes, I believe I got to see Ivan race for the first time at the 2016 World Junior Championships, and he was so. I apologize if it's not the right swimmer that I'm thinking of, but he was very quick and very dominant, and I believe, unfortunately, he went the wrong way around a direction. Well, it wasn't a directional buoy, but a buoy that was in the middle of the course that you had to take on your right-hand shoulder. This was in the boys 5K, and he was leading by like a good long way, but unfortunately didn't get to see that he needed to go around it and had to swim back. And I think he still finished in maybe 8th position or so, so somewhere very still like high up and very respectable. But I do love that we are getting to see, because of social media and because of the effort World Aquatics is putting into open water swimming, more about our athletes, getting to know them a bit better. Like, one of the drawbacks of swimming as a sport as a whole is the fact that swimmers are in the water. We don't get to see their faces. You don't quite get that personality out of them that you can see in basically any other sport. So the fact that we are able to utilize social media, and this is why I'm encouraging more people to try and interact with myself and Will, to just give us some goss, give us some insight. Let us know, mate, if you want to give us like a fake race plan, give us a fake race plan. It gives us a little bit of spice to do. We can jump on here and say, oh my gosh, we thought this swimmer was going to do X, but they're actually doing Y. Like, how fun and exciting is that? So basically, yeah, I think it's such a fantastic sport. We've got so many people who are investing so much time and effort into it, and we are really able to hopefully grow this out and continue, as Ivan is doing on his social medias, spreading the good word about open water swimming.
We always say, Alice, tell a friend to tell a friend, and Ivan is telling all of his friends to get around open water swimming, so shout out to him, and he's continuing to battle through as we come down to finish off lap 4. Credit to Krzysztof Rosowski here. He has really put in some work in this lap, and he's stretched out the field. We see Florian Welbrock battling in second place against Sasha Veli, and it looks like David Bethlehem, in fact, still sitting in fourth position, just 2 seconds off the lead, of course. There's some massive names sitting in this lead group, but as I said, keep an eye on Christoph. He has not fed here. This could be a pivotal move for the big Hungarian. I know that where his head would be at is he'd want to be leading into the next time they take on the current. He's specifically chosen not to feed there, and great to see David Bethlehem was on that, like as soon as it happened, Bethlehem jumped across. So I think the Hungarians are working together here, Alice, and this could be a very key part of the race.
Yeah, I mean, really big statement not to take a feed. It's the last sensible feed you can take, because you're not going to feed going into the last lap. So this is where you're saying, I'm committing to everything that I've got left in the tank being enough to make me win the race. And we see, I believe that's Logan Fontaine immediately on his feet. And, there's a slight gap in between Logan and the Florian Wellbrock. And then on his shoulder, on the shoulder of Florian is David Bethlehem as well. So you've really got the pace driving through now. And to your credit, Will, a great prediction on the podcast of saying that you think it's going to be Rosowski and Logan Fontaine, two of the stronger men up at the front. So it's going to be so interesting to see how this plays out. And just Marc-Antoine Olivier went round that, sat in 5th position. So he's climbed quite a lot. I know he was sat a little bit further back in about 14th, 15th position towards the middle of the race. So he's a looming threat as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Thanks, Alice. It means a lot coming from the Oracle. Obviously, what we're talking about is with regards to the podcast that Alice and I do, previewing every race that is on the World Cup and World Championship circuit. So if you want to go back and listen to episode 1, Alice, of course, very deservedly earned the name of the Oracle, getting almost all of the predictions right. And now I have to chase through the season, and what I suggested is this is a race that suits those stronger swimmers, and currently it's playing out that way with Christoph and Logan leading the way. What Christoph would not be wanting is for this to be the case. He wouldn't want Logan Fontaine sitting on his feet, because out of everyone in the field, as they're about to make their move into this current, sort of swimming into the current for this upcoming straight, is Logan Fontaine, the only other athlete that would say would be anywhere near as strong as Christoph in this field. So unfortunately, Christoph's going to go around this turn can, and he's going to see that blue French cap, and you talk about the emotional strength that these athletes require. That will be a moment, Alice.
Yeah, I hope that the demons of Ibiza were buried at the World Championships. I really do hope that, both for Rosowski and both for Logan Fontaine. I know we have alluded to it, but there were some words said at the end of Ibiza which indicated the emotions and the frustration that athletes were under during the back part of that race. And like I said, I don't think we're going to see that happen again. Definitely not this year, but potentially not again with these athletes. The fun thing about open water swimming is that every time you get in, it is new conditions and new things to learn. So we're now seeing Rosowski saying, I am finding this space. I'm not going to let myself get pushed around and dragged back in, as we saw at the end of Ibiza, which allowed the Italian sweep of the podium. So we still have some swimming to go. Can't get too ahead of ourselves. We've got just under 3k to go, but now they're swimming into the current, and I keep saying this, I apologize, but Florian Wellbrock into this current looks really, really good. I'm still, so I said my top 3 were Florian first, Rosowski second, and Marc-Antoine Olivier in third. I'm still sticking by that, I have to say.
Yeah, and fair enough as well. Like, you have picked 3 sensational athletes. I think it's really going to come down to where everyone's sitting with regards to the race and the overall season. Like, we're talking about specifically the women's race. I think there is going to be a a further out break than what we're going to see in this men's race. And what we are seeing play out here is many athletes still vying for that podium. So it's going to be tough, but it's going to be good to watch. And of course, we get to see all the action, as you can see with this overhead shot of this incredible bay here in Setubal, a famous bay with regards to the World Cup series. Year in, year out, it's held so many famous races, including, of course, 2012, 2016, and 2020 Olympic qualifying races. But what we're seeing now is this pace from Florian, who's moving into the lead, and Christoph really starting to burn the back athletes out of the pack. So that's going to continue to do so through the next lap and a half, and then, of course, we will see the final sprint for the win. But Alice, I don't think we're going to see the same result as we had last year, where there was a break of 20 seconds for the lead, and I know as soon as I say that, it's going to come back and bite me.
No, I do agree. I do agree. Again, this is the fun thing about open water swimming. We've both put a lot of hours and a lot of time into the sport as competitors, but also as broadcasters and commentators. So, and we're still quite a lot of the time proven wrong. It's so hard to predict the top three, it's so hard to predict the podium, and it's so hard to predict how a race will play out. But even still, I do think just with the stability that Florian and Berezovsky bring to the front of races, I don't think we'll see a breakaway like we did with it was it Ferrari? Sorry, my apologies. Back last year, where we saw that 20-second
Guidi.
gap, and we were both Greedy. Sorry, thank you so much. With Greedy, where we were both like, "Oh my gosh, what's just happened?" I just don't think we'll see that. I think the form that both Florian and Rozovsky are under just is showcasing that there won't be any such shenanigans at the back end of this race. But we might be proven wrong. Let's see.
Yeah. That's a great point, Alice. And I guess the only way that we're going to be able to tell is at the end of the race. And who knows? Who knows? As you said, anything can happen in this race. And as we saw in Ibiza, there was 3 Italian caps that stormed home at the end of that race, and we were looking through our notebooks furiously trying to figure out who exactly the athletes were. Of course, Philadelphia taking home the chocolates on that day. So well done to him, and he's obviously carrying that form into today and will be racing tomorrow in the knockout. For now though, this is the overhead shot of our lead group in the men's 10 kilometers. Florian Walbrock has taken back the lead from Krzysztof Rozovsky. He has got some competitors sitting around him, including Sashavelli. And Alice, we throw our minds back to Solma Bay, the winning move that enabled Florian to swim away to a comfortable victory. And of course, one of the most dominant shots I've seen in sport was the move that Sashavelli put in on that last sort of 1500 meters. So this could be potentially playing out exactly the same way as we saw in Summer Bay. The only difference being a very much in form Krzysztof Rozovsky, a tall task to get over the top of.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that like moment in Soma Bay, I just felt like, okay, wow. Um, Florian's here. He's raced in conditions which we don't typically like to see him race in or thrive in, is maybe the word I would use, thrive. And we're seeing him back here now. Just I do love the way the men race, because they're very much like, if I want to lead, I'm going to lead. It's not like, oh, I'll let you lead. If you're swimming faster, I'll drop in behind you and let you take that. It's very much, if I want to be in front, if I want my own line, I'm going to take my own line. And we see Sashavelli, making a move here now. And the same thing happened in Soma Bay, didn't it? Sashavelli kind of jumped in front of Florian, gave Florian that space, gave him that
Yeah.
opportunity to take his feet, and then it opened up the race. And do you think we're going to see a repeat here? Well,
Yeah.
that'd be so exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember at this point in the race is exactly where Sachavelli chose to go, and you know, Alice, we were so excited because we've seen Sachavelli coming for a number of years now, but he's really just struggled at the very highest level, where there is such a strong international field, and not struggled in the fact that he's not in the top 10, not top 20, as in he's not on top of the podium. So we thought that that was going to be the move that had catapulted Sachavelli as to the arriving moment of his career, and he's really trying to solidify himself once more today as he's pushing forward. But ultimately, what it led to, as you mentioned, in Summer Bay was the perfect launching pad for Florian Walbrock, and it is playing out very similar as we see some sort of gaps starting to open up through the field once more.
Yes, that's such a good point. So unfortunately, we're not seeing Sachavelli swim the 10K at the World Championships, but I love that he has not been like, oh, okay, this isn't my event at World, so I'm just going to sit back and let the race play out and see where I finish. No, he's taking the race to Florian, to Krzysztof Rosowski, and, still pushing through, still being relentless with that energy, and he has to be. He cannot sit back and be content with the 5K at the World Championships. Unfortunately, that's not going to get you on the team for the Olympic Games in 2028. He still has Logan Fontaine and Marc-Antoine Olivier, who are both at the top of their game still to contend with for those Olympic spots. And I know you might be thinking, "Oh, Alice, the Olympics is like so far away. Why are we focusing on that now?" But the selection for the Olympics will be starting in 2027, which is only 2 years away. And that comes around so quickly in terms of these open water seasons where you're kind of, you get round one season, then all of a sudden the next one's ready to start. So it's really all of that experience that he has to soak in. He's world junior champion, had a great competition back in. I know it was in Italy. It might have been Golfo Aranci. Apologies. There's so many fantastic Italian venues that we've been able to cover, so they kind of all blur into one. But a really to see at her senior being as well, really getting in and doing some fantastic racing. So we're just seeing Florian as well. This is what I was kind of like predicting. It's very similar to Soma Bay, where Sasha found that gap, found that speed, and it allowed Florian to like tuck in behind him. And we're just, as we're approaching the final lap, they're swimming with the current here. Florian looks good. He looks
Yeah.
really good.
Well, so just on that point, I think what we saw in Summer Bay at this point, Sasha was able to sit on the feet of Florian, and what that meant is because Sasha's essentially he's in a world of pain at the moment. His pace is dropping, not quite to the point where he's moving down the field yet. But what we do not want to see is Sasha moving to Florian's feet, because then that means the rest of the field will fall in behind Sasha. And when that gap then opens between Florian and Sasha, the athletes sitting third, fourth, fifth are going to have to come over the top of Sachavelli to get towards Florian. And that's how the gap actually opened up in Summer Bay. So we'll be watching the positions here. And that's when we talk about those pack dynamics, and being so aware in the race is really important, because your race can be dictated by whoever's sitting in front of you.
Yes. Yes, it's perfect. That's such a good way of saying it. And this works for further back in the field as well, as my experience typically worked with. I'd sit further back and like to punch through and overtake quite a few people at the end of the race. But you are at the mercy of the person in front, that they are still capable of keeping on the feet of the leader. And in the case of the front of the pack, if you do have somebody who's put in a really hard effort and has ended up dropping off the pace, it leaves the rest of the pack in a really dangerous position, where you have a swimmer like Florian, or I don't know, like an Ollie Clement, or a Marc-Antoine, or a Rozovsky, or a Bethlehem, all of these fantastic swimmers who, if they are in that position, are able to really just break and take the race. And I wonder if that's going to happen here. You know, Florian does look really good. He looks controlled. I see another German hat. Is that Ollie Clement? Has Ollie Clement like fought his way on this last lap? I think it is.
That will be huge because he was sitting around 19th at the end of lap 4. So if he's able to have pushed through, then he's going to be a very tall, a very strong force on that final lap. We know just how fast he is. We saw that in Ibiza where he was absolutely electric in that 3-kilometer knockout. So give him his own space and he's going to be tough to beat. But of course, I don't think he's actually beaten Florian yet in a race, Alice. Do you know?
Ooh, I don't think so. Apart from at the Olympics, I suppose. In Paris. I think that's one of the only times we've seen him do that. The fun thing about Ollie Clement is that he is such a decorated swimmer already, but I still know there's more to come from him. And I always speak about him as if he's this upcoming talent and like he's fresh, he's new on the scene. No, he's an Olympic silver medalist, but we haven't seen that consistency translate to racing yet. And I am really excited for the day that or the season, I should say the season, that he really cracks that, because I know the threat that he can bring to these races with his speed, and I also think his intelligence as a racer as well will be really dynamic and exciting for us to watch, but also for the athletes to have to contend with.
Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see exactly as to how that plays out. If we look back on the field, this is of course the end of lap 5. There is approximately 1.8 kilometers left to swim in this race, and Alice, we've been come to expect a similar situation in many a race now. We have another sort of lead, well, not change, but lead update with Florian Wellbrock and Christoph Rozovsky back in charge. We've spoken a fair bit about Coach Byrne and his squad that he's put together, including of course Florian Wellbrock and Ollie Clement in this race, and Moesha Johnson in the upcoming women's race. But equally so, Fred Vernot, who coaches Marc-Antoine Olivier, he has quite the resume himself. Most notably as of late, of course, coaching Summer McIntosh, the recent 400-meter freestyle world record holder, and 3:54.1. That is simply extraordinary for Summer McIntosh. I mean, not that long ago, we were marveling at Katie Ledecky going under 4 minutes. Now at 3:54.1, that is sensational.
Yeah, do you know when it's like verging on the point of, oh, that's a good men's time? Do you know? Do you know what I mean? It's like if you see a man do that, you're like, I'm always like, oh, you're a really good swimmer. And then it's at the point where you've got Summer McIntosh, who is only 18 years old, and she also took the 2 medley world record at the Canadian trials. I think she also broke the 400 IM record as well. Sorry, I'm just trying to take in what I've seen on Instagram from World Aquatics. I'm constantly seeing the next day like another world record for Summer McIntosh. And yes, she has done some training at altitude with Fred Vernot, with Marc-Antoine Olivier, and I've seen him joking on his Instagram that she'll be taking up open water swimming soon. Hey, man, again, if we see the likes of Claire Weinstein and Summer McIntosh commit to the 10K, I really don't know where that sport where open water swimming goes on the women's side for that. But imagine put it in the context of if Luca Martins jumped into this race and started swimming this. Oh my gosh! If I'm so sorry. This is where you're gonna have to help me out. The Olympic champion French, Leah Marchand. If Leah Marchand jumped in and started doing this as well, who knows where that's gonna go? It's such an exciting prospect to think if these pool swimmers wanted to give open water swimming a go. Not saying they're going to, but just for the likes of Summer McIntosh swimming with Fred Vernot, who has coached Maria Belmonte Most famously, Olympic champion in the 200 fly, incredible open water swimmer, and also incredible distance athlete. So, and Summer only being 18, I mean, I think she should give it a go at some point. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about exactly how that affects the training of these athletes. We look through though the top 12 now. There are a lot of Italians racing through there. Most notably, sitting in 10th position currently, Marcelo Guidi, 3.9 seconds back off the lead. This is where Guidi was last year, where he took the gold, of course, and in fact, this is a much stronger field than what we saw last year, as we see one of our Portuguese athletes taking his final feed. This is a very strong field, and Alice, it really doesn't suit the way that Florian likes to race, where he is able to get his own water. There are a lot of big, strong boys about to come through this field, and we can see it even on that second line there. David Bethlehem squeezed on the inside of the course, but here come the Italian caps. As you say, famously, if you beat one Italian, there's another one waiting for you, and it's about to come true once more. Potential sweep up for grabs again. Maybe, just maybe.
Honestly, yeah, who knows? Stranger things have happened. I really think Ibiza was the most chaotic finish we'll ever see. If I may be so bold, I know you can't predict too much in open water, but it was so atypical of what we're used to seeing, especially when you have seasoned racers like Rozovsky, Fontaine, Marc-Antoine Olivier. So I'm feeling very confident with both Rozovsky and Florian to keep this race, to keep it demure, to keep it controlled, to give us what we expect. They're both respecting each other. They're not trying to fight with each other, and I think we can expect to see that as we go into the finish. I don't know. I trust their capabilities as both being Olympic champions to keep this a tidy and clean race and want to get on the podium respectively for themselves.
Well, how do you see it playing out then, Alice? As we can see, it's about 7 across at this point, coming into the final time that they'll make their way out on the course. There are so many athletes, and you talk about everyone being quite friendly, especially between Christoph and Florian at this point. But there's going to be a certain point in the race where that friendliness sort of sits aside, and it comes down to who's going to win. Yeah, 4 across into this turn count. That is relatively crazy, and there is Ollie Clement, as you mentioned. This is going to be a chaotic final lap.
Yeah, it is so. This is the thing where it's so challenging. As much as Florian and Rozovsky want to control this as well as possible, you have the likes of the 3 Frenchmen in Fontaine, Marc-Antoine Olivier, and Sachavelli sitting back there. You've got David Bethlehem, who is a very, very experienced and strong racer, especially towards that finish podium, the finish arch as well. So, I mean, it's so hard to predict how this is going to go. I'm really expecting either Rozovsky or Florian to try and make this a strong break, but the pack is eating them back up now. And like you said, you've got like 5 across here at the top, 6. 6 across here at the top.
But the only thing,
an Italians.
Yeah. The only thing is, this is very far out. Like we still have a lot of swimming left. So it's a big move from whoever this is. I'm sorry, I can't pick that.
Marc-Antoine.
Potentially. Oh yeah, no, it does look like he's lost his cap. That could be a shout.
Is he racing double cap and lost one of them?
Potentially. Whatever it was, the nationality rating was a bit smaller than usual, so we'll get a better shot shortly. But there is a lot of swimming. Oh, there you go, Marc-Antoine leading the race, Alice. But as we're saying, there is a long way to go, and we know Christoph is going to have a few more bullets in the chamber should they be required. Same as Florian Wellbrock, of course. He can fight back very hard at the end of a race. So there is... I honestly have no idea how this is going to play out from this point.
No, yeah, you're right. Every time I'm like, oh, it's safe in Florian and Rosowski's hands. Maybe it isn't, but it is so far out. They're swimming against the current at the moment. There's a lot of frantic arms, white water. Also, just want to comment, the pack is so much larger at the moment than I expected it to be. You've got a lot of people still hanging in there for those for positions that, for some of these countries, finishing in 10th or 12th position would be a fantastic, fantastic result for them. It shows that progress, it shows that dedication, and it shows that you're only going to be, if you're finishing in 10th position with a pack this size, you'll only be maybe 3 or 4 seconds off of first place. Really, really great racing. So it's just showcasing how many nations and how many men in this case are really putting down some fantastic efforts to keep moving the sport forward. And I think that's Sasha Valley
Yeah,
making another surge
he's got no one on
to
his
find
feet.
clear water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's swimming in clear water, as you said, Alison. He looks sensational. The two Frenchmen out in front. David Bethlehem's got a good line sitting in behind Marc-Antoine Olivier as well. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I guess one of the key things here, and we promised ourselves in the podcast that we weren't going to overreact from the results of today's races. I doubt that we'll be able to hold ourselves to that promise, of course. But what I want to describe swimming to us, our fans around the world, as when you're in hard work, it's almost like your car blocks off a couple of gears. So you can't get to fifth or sixth gear because you're in so much work. And what that means is you can still swim fast, it just takes a lot more out of you. And where that impacts is at the end of the race. And, we're seeing that play out here. If Florian and Christoph don't kick it up a gear, I would say don't overreact, because they are in a lot of hard work,
Yes.
and Sasha really wants to take his first podium today, so he's going to be working significantly harder, knowing that he doesn't have to race 10 kilometers in a month.
That is such a good point. Yeah. As we've said throughout this broadcast, everybody's in very different places. Whilst we're only 4 or 5 weeks out from the World Championships, everybody's in very different places with where they are in their season, with selection. And yeah, Sasha Valley unfortunately isn't racing the 10K at the World Championships, so this is one of the last time, well, this is the last time he's going to race it before racing the 5K at World Champs. He's going to want to make a statement. He's going to potentially want to right some wrongs from the French National Championships. Not sure about the story of what happened in terms of why he didn't qualify, but regardless, he's came into this race looking to make a statement, looking to really showcase to himself, to France, to the world, that he is a real contender for the 10K, and putting himself on the podium here and putting in first position would be absolutely fantastic statement to make off the back of that. And also looking forward towards the 5K at the World Championships, a really exciting prospect.
An exciting prospect, that is for sure, Alice. So that's probably the best way to describe Sasha Valley at this stage of his career. He's got all the talent, desire, and I guess hard work to really put together one of those sensational long-term careers. But at this stage, at this young point of his career, he's still got a lot of work ahead of him. But for now, as well, he has a lot of work ahead of him through this final 600 meters. He's doing a sensational job. You can see just how hard he's working with that big kick. But Christoph just sitting off behind. He's been able to react to this surge quite well, sitting himself alongside Marc-Antoine Olivier.
Yeah, this is the thing, this is where these turns are going to be so crucial. You're coming around the buoy, and now all of a sudden the current isn't working back towards you anymore. It's going to be pushing you down the race course. And you saw it on the first lap where everybody kind of had to really overcorrect. And this is where the experience of the race has kicked in for all of these swimmers at the front, and it's a much cleaner line across the top. What you have to do here is actually kind of angle yourself ever so slightly, maybe towards 1 o'clock rather than 12 o'clock as you're racing. And it just helps you correct properly, and so you don't have to climb back up the course to get around the buoy that you're swimming towards at the moment on the top and on the top side of the course at the moment. So I don't know where what. Should we do final predictions? Should we be quite bold and difficult to ourselves? Do final predictions of how we think this race will turn out. Sasha Valley just looks so good here, and he's really taking the pace forward. And David Bethlehem's coming up alongside Rozovsky here. You've got Marc Antoine. Oh, is that still Marc Antoine?
Yeah, still Marc.
Yeah, it is Marc Antoine. Yeah.
Yeah, still Mark sitting in there. Honestly, Alice, like your guess is as good as mine as it is with anyone watching along. I guess it is utter chaos out there. That's the only way to describe it. We can see Logan Fontaine moving into that shot on the inside of the course once again, and Marc Antoine starting to move through to Sasha Valley's hip. I think. Whoever is leading this race at this turn cam will not win the race, but I do like your thoughts with regards to what it's going to mean as they move into swimming with the currents as opposed to swimming against it. It's going to be much harder to move forward, but I just think that the energy that's being spent at the front of the race right now is a lot more than what's sitting currently behind it. So all I've basically done is ruled out two swimmers to win this race, but hopefully, what's your prediction?
I think if I'm pulling it all the way back to the first lap, which seems an age ago now because we've had so much play out, especially in this last lap, the space that Marc Antoine managed to find, he managed to get like a good half a body length up on everyone within the space of about 10 meters. And what he's executed here with getting in front of Sasha, and, finding that space, he's really starting to surge forward now. And this is where we were talking about maybe Sasha might be feeling a bit tired. He might block somebody from potentially being able to keep up with Marc Antoine here. And he's really found his space, Marc, here. And it's only about how far is it into the finish wall? Do you have the number on that?
Yeah, 650 meters. So
okay, it's long. Okay, yeah,
it's still a long straight, but they're going to be working very hard. So it's going to seem a lot shorter than what it would in lap one.
Yeah, and moving with the current as well. This race is going to be over in the next about 3.5 minutes. It's very, very quick speed, but Marc Antoine looks so good here, and I don't know if that's I just can't quite tell with the Hungarian hat off behind Sashavelli if it's Rozovsky or Bethlehem, but still fighting it out. And I think tucked in behind him is Florian Wellbrock or Ollie Clement, but I think that they both have a similar stroke.
Yeah, no, that's a great call, Alice. It is Christoph leading Florian, which is really interesting. So usually when we see races pack up like what we just saw in that last lap, Florian gets spat out all the way to the back of the field, and he can often finish really far down. A bit of a battle happening there between Sasha and Christoph for the feet of for the feet of Marc Antoine. That is exactly not what they want to be doing right now. They do not want to start a battle because, as you can see, Florian's been brought into the race and there is a gap for Marc. This is starting to heat up here, Alice. This is very exciting racing.
Yeah, this is where there's two things are either going to happen. Marc Antoine is either going to get pulled back into the pack and then kind of end up having to battle and really scrap and fight. He's done so well at getting this gap here, and Sashavelli is very much working in Marc's favor in terms of making things difficult for Rozovsky, not wanting to give up Marc's feet, but Marc looks really good here, and Rozovsky's just battling off to the side with Sashavelli. You've got Florian Wellbrock sat in behind that. I think that's an American hat.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I'm not sure which swimmer that might be. We saw Ivan Puskovic quite high up there. We saw Joey Tepper have a fantastic race back in Ibiza. Dylan Gravely was also in there too. So, it could be any one of those swimmers. It's really difficult to track sometimes, how everyone's moving throughout the pack. But Marc Antoine looks really good to take the win here. I think It's challenging, right?
Yeah, it's still so far out to call. I think
Yes, it is.
the thing that Mark has going for him at the moment is Sasha is completely interested in trying to block Christoph from getting on his feet. If and this is where it's difficult for Christoph. Like he does need to give Sashavelli his own water here so that he's able to chase down Mark in the long race. This is a big move though. Sashavelli's fallen off the feet here. Marc
Yeah,
Antoine has got some separation, Alice. Just maybe we're going to see the prediction as you called it. Marc Antoine has got not even, sorry, about 2 meters from the field, and this could be a decisive point in the race.
yeah. All it takes is that little gap to open up, and we saw it in the first lap. I just want to pull back to that again. We saw it in the first lap where he managed to find that gap, and he's drawing it out in a much slower, much more methodical way this time, rather than having that finger snap burst of speed ready to go. So he looks really good here. Training wise, I mean, coming off the back of French national championships, taking home that triple crown. Just trying to see if he competed at the European Championships, and if he did, I haven't got him written down as finishing in one of the higher up places. So
Yeah.
either way, coming off the back of it in a really, really good form, putting down a statement ready for the World Championships, and there's clear water behind him in this shot. I think
Yeah.
you might be able to see the splash of the tips of the fingers of Sashavelli behind him, but oh my gosh, that's it.
It's a hard thing to tell at this point in the race because Mark is traveling faster than anyone in the water, but I think Christoph actually does have the better line. So this shot here, you can see Mark leads Sashavelli. Behind them, it is Florian Walbrock, I believe, or potentially could be Ollie Clement, because Florian was on the other side of the field. This isn't truly indicative of where that pack is sitting, though. So that's a better shot. You can see. Let's keep in mind that Mark is still sitting on the inside of the course. They do have to come over more than what we've seen in the earlier laps to get into this finish line. Oh, that's a great shot. That is the race there, especially if Christoph can't do anything about getting those swimmers off his feet. In fact, with this swimmer on the inside, I believe that is... I'm going to go with Florian. No, actually changed my mind. Going to go with Ollie Clement there in third place. If that is Ollie, he could be nudging Christoph out of the podium with his smart move at the end of the race.
Yeah, this is where those predictions of, whose feet do I take here? What do I do? Do I jump across? There's only 2 swimmers in terms of like where Ollie, or I will say the German swimmer, the German swimmer is sat. It's a gamble. It's a big risk. It's one of those where it will either pay off and you'll get third place or potentially higher, or if you're stuck in the rest of the pack, you kind of have to fight everything out, and you might get third place, but you might also get 8th place. So I think he's made a very smart move here, jumping across and just putting in all of his effort to see how that plays out. And you've got more chance of getting on the podium this way, I believe. So it's a very smart move. And I think this is it. Marc Antoine is taking it into the finish.
Here we go, Alice. As we come into the finish line, you dubbed him earlier this year Mr. Consistent. It is Marc Antoine Olivier, who's recently been crowned the triple champion of the French nationals, and he is going to continue that fine form at a very critical time of the year. The gold medal in Setubal to finish off this iconic event delivers in France, and Marc Antoine Olivier stands atop in a dominant last lap. Sashavelli gets second, a big high five across the 2. And then we see the third across the line is Oliver Clement. What a finish from the German to get in third place there. That is open water swimming at its best. And I tell you what, we're not going to read all the way into these results, but you would be very happy to go to sleep tonight as Marc Antoine Olivier, a month out from the World Championships and absolutely steaming towards a potential gold.
I mean, great racing, absolutely great racing. He was world, he was world leader last year in terms of the overall finish in the World Cup. It's always consistently turning up, always on the podium. We've got a French, 3 of the Frenchmen in the top 4. Rosowski finishing in fifth place. It looks like there might be subject to ratification there because they've got the same finish time behind Marc-Antoine Olivier. So either way, still highly, highly competitive. And Ollie Clement there, I mean, it's one of those things like we can't ever doubt him because the way it's still one of the best open water performances that I've ever seen. You'll have to fill in the gaps we have. I believe it was Golfo Ranchi in 2023 or 2022 where he was like 50 seconds off of the pace and managed to climb all the way back up with that speed. So, if he's ever sat far back in the pack, it's not really an issue for him.
Yeah, not game over ever for Ollie Clement, and that speaks to the rigor of his training and the tenacity of the individual that is the young German, and also to the depth that they are producing. But a very good time to be Marc-Antoine Olivier. You feel for Sachavelli like you'd love to see him racing the 10 kilometers at the World Championships after such a strong performance today, but also earlier this year in Summer Bay. But it's good to have the depth in these federations as well. We won't see him. We may see him another day, but we do get to see the Frenchman out of that incredible training squad with Fred Venot as he's taken the gold today. Plenty of changes in that last lap, though, Alice. Ollie Clement, as we've mentioned, but we had Florian and Christoph really dominating for most of the race, and unfortunately for Florian, just falling off on the back end.
Yeah, and this is where training, fatigue, it all kicks in. Timing, just might have just tied up a little bit at the end. Who's to say it's so difficult? And I still stand by that the stability that Florian and Rozovsky brought to the front of the race kind of enabled Sachavelli and Marc-Antoine to get that water at the end. It just stopped the chaos that we saw in Ibiza. And I know I keep drawing it back to Ibiza, but that was really something kind of unprecedented. And so here we see a more traditional finish, and Marc-Antoine really managing to take it away there. And just touching on Sachavelli and the kind of selection policies that we see different nations take. There's kind of two ways of doing it. You see some nations do will take you to World Cups, and then out of these three World Cups, you just see Coach Bernd and Florian having a conversation there. I'd love to be like a little fly on the wall if I understood German to know what they were saying about the race and getting that insight. But back to the selection policies, it's just so interesting how there's two ways of doing it. You either do it at like one competition, we select from this competition, that's it, or you kind of do a best overall ranking from 2 or 3 races. We see the French team do it at one competition, like one and done, and the Italians sometimes do it where they kind of have an overall ranking from 2 races. So
Yeah.
just two very different ways of doing it. They both have their pros and their cons.
Yeah. No, you are right. As we get confirmation or initial confirmation until the results are ratified of the top 10, Marc-Antoine, Sachavelli, Ollie Clement, as we've expected. A star-studded top 10, though. Unfortunately, just losing it from the screen. Florian Wellbrock not falling too far off the pace, which is good to see from the German. I know he is a winner, and anything except gold would have been gold was the intended result today. Unfortunately, didn't play out that way, but we know he'll be back to fight another day, that's for sure. As you're mentioning, though, Alice, with those selection criteria, it is also interesting to note when certain federations put their qualification periods. I know the Germans and the Australians selected at the end of Summer Bay, so those teams have been selected since February this year, which means they've been back at training, working hard, getting ready to race at the World Champs, whereas some federations, like the French, only selecting last week. And you can see that has had quite a positive impact on Marc-Antoine, coming out and winning today and carrying that fine form off a Triple Crown, now a World Cup win into the World Championships. As an athlete yourself, what would have been your preference, to be selected just before the World Championships or with months to prepare?
This is a really good point. we like in Britain would traditionally do it in February, so fairly early on, similar time to when the Germans did it. And um, I think it's a twofold thing of it's quite difficult to, you know, to stay like really okay, we've got qualification coming up in May or June. It's only 5 weeks out from the World Championships. You potentially might want to taper for it, especially if you're dealing with countries like Germany, Italy, France, who have these really high calibers of racers that you're going to have to beat. I think for swimmers, it is better to have it later because it stops your season from being over in February. There are some swimmers, potentially on the German side, use that as an example, who would have had their season over in February for open water swimming. And it either means that, yeah, you go to World Cups, that's still like such great high level competition, but it might diminish your your psyche, your dedication. You might find it more difficult to contend with the rest of the season. And when you're dealing with an Olympic cycle, you can probably afford to take 2025 off. But when you're looking towards 2026 and 2027, having the qualification periods earlier and missing it means that you might just not want to race the rest of the season. And do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, there's a potential to just get a little bit apathetic with the rest of the racing. So I think in terms of federations, especially those federations which don't have the depth yet, I think waiting until later on in the season to select would be much more beneficial for them.
Yeah, yeah, no. Um, I guess there's no right answer, as we've seen.
Exactly.
Otherwise, everyone would sort of follow that line. And I mean, for some federations, you're only really lucky enough to have one athlete that is eligible to go to world champs. So it is truly a privilege for some of these federations to have selection criteria and qualification standards that athletes need to meet. And yeah, it's always an interesting sort of narrative to follow as an open water fan. But as we see some of these athletes coming down to finish off their race now, a reminder, Alice, to all spectators that we will be doing the men's medal presentation right after this race. So please stick around for the continued coverage of stop 3 of the 2025 World Aquatics World Cup here in Setubal, Portugal. A famous course that is delivered once again, an iconic race to the history that this incredible venue holds. One point that I do want to circle back on, Alice, is Marc-Antoine Olivier taking out the sprint lap, taking out the overall race, and I believe at the end of today's race, he'll actually be our new series leader as well. That's quite a day out. That's quite some momentum leading into the World Championships.
Definitely, and I'd also just add with the series leader, I think he's going to have like a sizable gap. Just because, again, as I said, he's like king of consistency. This doesn't surprise me too much that he is going to be at the top of it because I think in Egypt he came third, and yeah, came third in Egypt and fourth in in Ibiza last time. So like I said, he's always in that top five, always so consistent. And then to take home the win today just
Yeah,
gives so many points. And that overall prize money is looking very good for him, as well as
yeah.
getting that money lap at the start.
The defending champ as well. As we look back at some of the race highlights, as we can see early on, this sprint lap is really starting to become something spicy. We got that initiative introduced to us earlier this year, Alice. We weren't sure what it would lead to, but unequivocally a success early on with some dominant displays of sprinting through the first 3 stages. Moving through, though, it was Florian that really controlled the pace as he does through most of the race and looks so comfortable out in front, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Like I've been saying with Florian, just seeing him put himself in these conditions in this race, it's like it's just more training, more preparation. We very much know that Burnt's Group have approached this with very much a training mindset. You know, coming in off of altitude, dropping in, not even swimming on the race course until the actual race itself, and then hopping straight back up to altitude afterwards. It's very much all geared towards the World Championship. So to see Ollie Clement finish in third and Florian finish in sixth position, I think it's just there's again, I like to use the word foreshadowing. I was an English student. There's a lot of foreshadowing and there's a lot of threats coming from them for the World Championships.
And all that means for our fans is that there's going to be more exciting racing ahead. The beauty as well is the 3 kilometer knockout. We get to see them race once more. You see that finish there. Sasha Valley was just so strong in that final lap. I mean, he was helped by the field, but ultimately Marc-Antoine Olivier takes the victory. You can see just how much it means to him, and he goes home today with the gold medal under his belt, the sprint title given to him, and much more ahead of another race tomorrow. And I guess, Alice, it's a different day when you go home after the 10K as opposed to when you were preparing for the relay towards the sprint, the 3 kilometer knockout. I guess if you're an athlete right now, what would you be aiming to do here? Like, what is the post race preparations for tomorrow?
Oh, okay. This is really interesting because we'll speak about this for the women at the end of the women's race. That is going to be a completely different set of preparations. So for the men right now, you hop out, get some water in you, get some recovery, probably do a bit of a swim down, or definitely do a bit of a swim down. I wouldn't typically do a swim down because like I'm just going to go sit on a plane the next day. I'll figure that out in training over the next week. But when you're racing the next day, you do want to swim this out. Maybe even go to the pool this afternoon if that's an option to you. Get 1 or 2K, maybe if you're used to doing some longer distances in the pool, up to 3 or 4K, and really swim that out. And make sure you take on like hydration tablets, really good eating, really good nutrition in you, because the 3K knockout, you cannot afford to be too tactical with it in terms of conserving your energy. You need to get in and be ready to go from the start.
Yeah, and that's I guess where the sport has evolved to as well. Previously, you wouldn't have to be on it from the start of the race, but now there is no rest for the wicked. Unfortunately, there you are racing from the very start of the race. One final thing before we go to a quick break ahead of the medal presentations, Alice, is there's a massive difference between swimming in the ocean after a race and then swimming in the pool. Why do you think athletes like to head to the pool instead of racing, cooling down in the ocean?
Yeah, really good point. I think just the strain that swimming in open water, especially oceans, can put on you is a lot. And typically when you get in an open water venue, you kind of want to do the full lap. I personally never felt comfortable with cutting out like half of the course or something. I was like, if I'm getting in this, I want to do at least a full lap. And then that's already like 1.6K. You don't get the opportunity to even like hang onto a wall or have tumble turns, so you can get to like stretch your hips out. So I always thought the best way to swim down would be to get into a pool, just so you have the option of swimming 50 meters and having a break, at the minimum. Do you know what I mean? Just allows you to really to be able to recover, rather than having to put yourself under the strain that open water swimming gives, even if you're swimming steady.
That's a great point, Alice, and we'll continue to break that down, especially after the women's races. They have a very tight turnaround between the 10 kilometers and the 3 kilometer knockout. So, just reiterating that we will be going to medals very shortly for the men's 10 kilometers, and then Please join us this afternoon for the continued coverage of the women's 10 kilometers here in Setubal, Portugal. Such an iconic venue that has meant so much to our sport over such a long time, and it has put on a fantastic show once more this morning, with plenty more to come today. But for now, bear with us as we get ready to present the medals for the men's 10 kilometers.
Dois. E dentro de poucos minutos iremos proceder à cerimónia protocolar de entrega de prémios aos 3 primeiros classificados. Também vamos celebrar aqui os líderes, quer do sprint, quer os líderes júniores das águas abertas, assim como o líder, o overall líder da Taça do Mundo ao fim de 3 etapas concluídas.
So only minutes away now from the medal presentation for the men's 10 kilometers here in Setubal, rounding out stop 3 of the 2025 Water Aquatics Open Water World Cup. As well as the medal presentation, we'll of course have the presentation of the sprint lap, as well as the series lead for both the open and junior category. Alice, as we prepare for this medal ceremony, Marc-Antoine Olivier's victory here in Setubal marks a significant moment in his career. Given his recent performances, his current form, what does this win signify? Do you think, and I said we weren't going to overreact, but do you think he's the favourite going to Singapore?
Ooh, that is a statement, isn't it? Yeah. He's just so consistent. He's so consistent. Always, always in the top five. Pretty much always on the podium. I'd love to know his podium finishing statistics over the last 2 years. He's just always up there. So, um, I am very confident he'll be on the podium. I don't know who'll be first, but I'm very confident he'll be on the podium in Singapore. I would. He's probably the one swimmer that I would like put money on to be on the podium. If I may be so bold.
So yeah, I mean, going off that comment, I would say yes. I think you're correct. Marc Antoine is well. I mean, there's a reason he's called Mr. Consistent, right? He's just always thereabouts, and I think his recent form, as you mentioned before, in Soma Bay, carrying across to Ibiza, and then again today, but also sitting aside from that, to win 3 races at French Nationals is simply sensational. Like, that is a mega effort to win the 10, the 5, and the 3 kilometer knockout in a star-studded field, even if it is just your home nation. Like, that is it's undeniable. But I mean, going into this race, we really didn't think that anyone in the world could beat Florian Wellbrock, and then we see Krzysztof Rozowski claim some dominant performances in the European Championships, and then Andrea Filidelli and Ibiza. So it really is up for grabs. But the beauty is we get to see it play out in just over a month's time. But for now, we pay our respects to the podium presenters and, of course, our medalists today here in Setubal. It's always great to have the support of the local dignitaries as well as the World Aquatics administration backing these events.
Yes, definitely. Always so important that they are there supporting. And as we've said throughout the race, I'm sure we're going to say it a lot more in the women's race, how iconic Setubal is in terms of hosting a World Cup year after year after year, and long may it continue.
That's it, Alison. It doesn't happen unless we have that support. So we move now to the presentation, I believe, of our junior series leader. And no surprise, we have another Brazilian leading the way, Alice. It just goes to show it really helps when your federation backs these races.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great addition from World Aquatics to recognise the junior efforts in these races, because it is so challenging, speaking from first-hand experience, going from a junior who was very good at junior racing, and then you come to a senior race and nothing is forgivable. If you make a mistake, it can be over in a flash. So to see Brazil again at the top with that, it is great. Melechi took it out last year overall, and it's looking like we've got strong potential for another Brazilian to do the same.
And shout out to Leonard Brandt de Macedo. He's I know he's got a support crew that's been backing us as well, Alice, with those statistics of each lap. So shout out to the Brazilian Sporting Club and shout out to Leonardo. But now Ollie Clement in bronze. What a final lap from him.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Letting that speed show through. We saw it in the 3K knockout in Ibiza, and again here, just showcasing what he can do. And again, another looming threat for the consistency of seeing him on a podium. It's a really exciting prospect. Olympic silver medalist, but when he really cracks that consistency and starts to always put himself in those positions to get on the podium, I really think he'll be a very strong contender.
That's it. And unfortunately not racing the 3 kilometer knockout tomorrow, but we will be able to see these athletes, Sasha Veli in second, But today's moment belongs to the fastest man in the water, and that is the one heading up the stairs now, Marc-Antoine Olivier, on top of the podium, and his year just continues to build.
Yeah, I mean, always a crowd give the king of consistency. Took home the sprint lap, taken home the gold in the 10, and then also going to be the series lead as well. And I really do think he's going to have a sizable lead. It'll be really interesting to see what the results are off the back of this. So getting a cap on a cap, because I'd love to see him put the other cap on top of that too.
There you go. That is, I mean, commitment from Mark to his team as well, to put the original cap on. But here we go, the 3 podium medalists ahead of the French national anthem. A special moment for all of these athletes.
A vossa atenção para escutarmos o hino de França.
Now please stand for the national anthem of France.
What a race and what a podium here in Setubal. Marc-Antoine Olivier showing us once again why he's one of the greats of our sport. Sachavelli delivering a breakout performance for France, and Ollie Clement always right there when it counts. Alice, before we sign off, when you look at that podium, what stands out to you most about where this World Cup season is headed?
What stands out most? I think, oh gosh, we're so far through it already, actually. We have so much swimming to come, but already in such a fantastic place. So I think it's someone has to challenge Mark in terms of the overall series rankings. Just always consistently up there. Great moment for Sachavelli breaking through onto, I think, his first senior individual podium. Oh,
told me to start fast pretty early, so I slept a bit at the start, and then I worked my way back to the top.
Well done today. Sasha, I'll come to you next. Again, congratulations on a great race. How do you feel after racing today?
It's a good race today. It's my best race in the World Cup. And
You yourself and your teammate took a different line coming into the finish, which was quite exciting for all of us to watch today. Was that the plan?
yeah, it's not the plane, but it's a good finish, half finish, and it's a good training for the.
Congratulations, Marc-Antoine. Congratulations on your win today. Congratulations on your win today. Very dominant performance. You were sprint lap winner. You're now overall series lead as well as gold medalist today. How do you feel?
I'm very happy because I have a good shape. Last week we played the qualification of the French Championship for the next World Championship. So now I try to keep my swim. I'm swim very good today, so I'm very happy to win the World Cup today.
You mentioned the World Championships there. Obviously, they're very close on the horizon. What will the next few weeks look like for you?
Now I need to have a good recovery because next week I have the French Championship. It's qualified for the pool. So I need before to swim good at the pool, and after we will see for the World Championship.
Brilliant. Thanks Yes, everyone, one final round of applause for our medalists today.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, just picking up on what Marc-Antoine said there real quickly about needing to get that good rest in and then following up with the French pool championships. I believe he said to qualify in the pool as well. Really, really exciting prospect that he could be racing in so many races at the World Championships, but a fantastic race for him here today.
Thanks, Alice, and thank you for joining us in what's been an outstanding men's 10 kilometre here in Setubal. Stop 3 of the World Aquatics Open Water World Cup. From a chaotic opening lap to a composed and clinical win by Marc-Antoine Olivier, this race had everything we've come to expect at this level. We're not done yet. We'll be back on air later today with the women's 10 kilometres, where another stacked field will take to the Salto River. Moesha Johnson, Victoria Malavi Farkas, Leah Boy and Angela Martinez are just a few names to watch as the battle for the World Cup points continues. So don't go far. On behalf of Alice Deering and the entire World Aquatics broadcast team, I'm Will Rollo. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you shortly for the women's race.